Hello everybody. So today we're going to talk about graphing inequalities. Before we talk about that, the first thing we have to do is discuss the four inequality symbols. So we do have four inequality symbols. We have a greater than sign, a less than sign, then we have greater than or equal to. So what that means is that the left number is greater than the right number. Or we could also have a situation where the two numbers are equal if we have that symbol. And then we also have less than or equal to, and same thing. So that means that, or very similarly I should say, that means that the left number is smaller than the right number, such as 0 is less or equal to 1, or the two numbers are equal. So we could also use that symbol when the two numbers are equal as well. So when we're graphing inequalities, and let me just say that inequalities have a wide range of answers oftentimes. So with an equation, especially a linear equation, you usually only have one answer. Once in a while you have those rare cases of no solution or all real solutions, but most of the time you get one answer to your problem. But with inequalities, you have a wide range of answers. So when you have a greater than or a less than sign, you're actually going to use an open circle to graph those, because when you have those two symbols, that means the number that you put it on is not part of the solution set. So an open circle means that the number is not part of the solution set. Now, if you have a greater than or equal to sign or a less than or equal to sign, that requires a closed circle. And what that means is that the value that the circle lies on is part of your solution set. So the value that the closed circle is on is also part of your answers. With the open circle, the value that it's on is actually not part of your answers. Okay? So let's say we have the inequality x is greater than 3. Well, what that means, by the way, is that any number greater than 3 is a solution to this inequality. So we could have 3.1 or even something like 3.01 as long as it's bigger than 3. But 3 itself or anything less than 3 would not be part of the answer. 10 would be an answer, 15, 1,000, you get the idea. Any number greater than 3 is part of the answer here, okay? So because there's such a wide range of answers, we graph the solution set. So what you do is you make a number line. Usually for your number lines, you put 0 in the middle, but we'll talk about it later where you don't have to necessarily put 0. But you definitely want to put at least 5 numbers on your number line. Sometimes you'll be lucky and there'll be a number line already for you. And remember, just a greater than sign or a less than sign corresponds to an open circle. And since any number greater than 3 is an answer, we shade to the right. Okay? So that's showing that any number greater than 3 is an answer to this inequality. Okay? Let's do another one. Let's say we have x is less than or equal to negative 3/4. Okay? Remember, you can use your calculators for these. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to know where negative 3/4 lies in your number line. And if you divide negative 3 by 4 in your calculator, you're going to get negative 0.75. So that means that that number is between 0 and negative 1. You should also know that because your numerator is less than your denominator. Anytime you have a fraction and your numerator is less than your denominator, that means the fraction is less than 1. So we're going to make a number line. Again, I put a couple numbers on there. And now we got to put a circle where that negative 3/4 lies. That's going to lie between, again, 0 and negative 1. So I'm actually going to make 3 marks in between 0 and negative 1 because each of those marks is actually a fourth. And I'll put it on the third one. But it's going to be a closed circle because of that guy right there. And now since I want numbers less than or equal to negative 3/4, we shade to the left. Okay? So that's how you graph inequalities. Let's say we're asked to graph this inequality. Negative 6 is greater than or equal to x. you could graph that in its current form, but here's what happens, guys. I'll be honest. In my 14 years and even before that, a lot of kids, about half the kids, make mistakes graphing this. And what gives them trouble is when x is second. X is the values we want. So here's what I'm going to do. Anytime x is to the right of your inequality, I always encourage you to rewrite it. Okay? And what happens is, all you do to rewrite it is put x first and put your -6 second. So watch this. Okay? But when I rewrite it, I still want to show that -6 is bigger than x, so I'm going to keep the inequality open towards the -6. And now I read that as x is less than or equal to -6. And this is a lot easier for people to graph. So please make sure, I can't stress this enough, this is one of the things I really, really need you to pay attention to. If x is second or to the right of your inequality, rewrite it so x is first. It'll help you get the answer right pretty much every time. The kids who leave it in this format usually get it wrong about 50% of the time, which isn't a good percentage. Okay? So I'm going to -6. I'm going to put a closed circle there because it's less than or equal to. And since I want values of x less than or equal to -6, we actually shade to the left. Running out of space there, but it's shaded to the left. Okay? Let's do another one like that. So let's say we have -2 is greater than or equal to x. Well, remember, we just talked about this. And actually, let me change that slightly. Give me 1 sec. That's better. So I just changed the problem slightly. Something more than I wanted. -2 is less than or equal to x. So remember, we're going to rewrite that. So all to do to rewrite it is put x first and the number second. And now if you look, the way it's open, the inequality is always eating, if you will. The crocodile is always eating the bigger number. So when I rewrite it, I still want to say x is bigger and show the crocodile is eating x. X is greater than or equal to -2. And most kids are going to graph that fine. So we go to -2. Try to make your numbers equally spaced out. I got a little bit too wide in -2 there. But again, a closed circle on -2. And since I want values of x greater than or equal to -2, I shade to the right. Again, that means that any number including -2 and greater than -2 makes this inequality true. So let's talk about our last inequality type. Let's say we have a negative sign in front of the variable. Well, what happens here is we actually have to solve it, okay? So you have to have the variable totally by itself. And if you remember, we did this with equations, there's a -1 in front of that x. So if you don't see a number in front of your variable, it's 1. Since there's a negative sign in front of it, it's -1. So if I gave you the equation -x equals 1, I think all of you would tell me to divide by -1. Well, guess what? The same thing is going to be true right now for inequalities. Actually, inequalities and equations are the same in most ways. But here's the exception. The rule when you're solving inequalities is when you multiply or divide both sides of your inequality by a negative number, you got to flip your inequality sign. So everything else stays the same. The x goes to the left, but I have to flip the sign, and I do my math here, and we get -1. So again, if you divide both sides by a negative number, you got to flip your inequality sign. For today, that number will only be a -1 that you're dividing by, but in the future, it could be any negative number, and we'll talk about that more later. So I go to -1. I put an open circle, and I want values of x less than -1, so we shade to the left. Okay? Let's do one more like that. It's actually going to be the hardest problem we're going to do. So here we got a double whammy. We have -4 is less than -x. So the first thing I'm going to do for this, I'm going to get x by itself. I'm going to solve it. So I'm going to divide both sides by -1 because I have to get rid of this -1 here being multiplied to x. So always do your math from left to right. +4. But remember, we divided by a -1. Got to flip the inequality sign. X, because the -1s cancel inverse operations. But remember, if my x is or my variable's on the right when I solve the inequality, I want to rewrite it. so I could graph it correctly. X is less than 4. I still want to say the 4 is bigger. Now I can graph this one on the right here. So I have a open circle at 4. And I'm going to shade to the left because I want values of x that are less than 4. So hopefully you found this video lesson helpful. Please let us know in the comments below if you have any questions. And guys, you're in charge of your own learning here. I think this is a very good video, but you could search any videos on YouTube, and generally speaking, because if they have a lot of likes, you know, generally speaking, kind of sorts itself out. But there's a lot of videos or sources on YouTube or anywhere on graphing linear inequalities. So if you need extra support, check out the resource I share with you on the Symbalu page. Just type in graphing inequalities. But there's a lot of resources out there if you didn't think this was enough to help you learn this material and be successful. So thank you very much. Have a fantastic day.